Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I am Stella Gold. For those that are unfamiliar with my gold standard, I'm the CEO and founder. I have such an exciting conversation today with Bri of the Prosperity Project, who has done and is continuing to do such incredible work for, the entire global economy. Let's be real. I am so excited to dive in, but before we dive in, I do want to start this by honoring the land that we are on and begin our rich conversation with that intention. So, we acknowledge that my gold standard is located on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, otherwise known as the San Francisco Bay Area. And we honor the Ohlone and Muskogee, I believe, in Atlanta, where Bri is calling in from, and other Indigenous caretakers of these lands and waters, the elders who lived here before, the Indigenous today, and the generations to come. And as guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. And we wish to pay our respects with this land acknowledgement and by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. So if you are unfamiliar with whose land that you're a settler on, I invite you to look on native-land.ca and to read up on the Land Back Initiative. And if you are unfamiliar also with paying your shumi, which is the land tax, see if there is a local shumi in the land that you are residing on. So let's transition to this conversation. Oh my gosh. I'm honestly still processing that I'm seeing you here because I'm just so excited to have your presence and to share the work that you're doing with the world and our communities and my gold standard. So let's dive into that. I want to hear, what is the Prosperity Project all about, and your journey? Like, why did you start the Prosperity Project? Why student loans? Because that's what this is all about.
For sure. Well, thank you first and foremost for the guest slot to round out Financial Literacy Month. It's a privilege and an honor, and to be especially the presence of someone as conscious and trying to shine a light on these many issues. So the Prosperity Project is a nonprofit, and we are all about helping improve the socioeconomic trajectory of college-educated Black women with outsized student debt in particular, which we're currently doing through our signature program, the 35 to Free initiative. And in all honesty, this work was born out of a very personal and close to home place. So I went to Dartmouth College for undergrad and ended up borrowing about $100K even in principal to finance my education, which, by the way, for the record, it was a total cost of $250K. So, I'm sure we'll get into that later. Just
wow,
the fact that it costs as much as a mortgage to get a degree. But by the time I went into repayment, that $100,000 was then $116,000 in student loans. And it just was such a source of agony and frustration and hardship. And it was very much a hindrance to my ability to succeed in every regard, pretty much, professionally, personally, and then even with the confines of just adjusting to life as a young adult. It really stood in the way of my ability to take creative risks and take risks that could advance my career in other ways. And even to get to a position to become an entrepreneur. So just in seeing how apathetic that people were, just, both strangers and people close to me, unfortunately, just this kind of disdain and finger pointing attitude that was going on. And I just took stock of the current solutions that people have out on the market as of right now. And I was like, none of these, I think, are the best that we can possibly do as society. So that's what I decided to hit the ground running with once we got started.
I I do have a follow-up question because, some people will respond when I think about student loans, and it was almost like, well, like you're an adult now after you graduate. And so now you're responsible for this monthly payment, or now you're responsible for this huge mortgage size loan at the age of 18. But you don't have to worry about it for 4 years, like
Mhm.
out of sight, out of mind. The fact that in 4 years, or did you do 2 years or 4 years when you
I did
did?
4.
Okay. So in 4 years, you accrued about 16,000 in interest. So 100K went to 116.
Yeah.
What was your monthly payment? If
Um,
you don't mind sharing.
oh, I'm an open book. Like there's really
Yeah.
no hot button question.
Mhm.
I try to be as transparent as I can because I feel like part of the issue is that people feel, shame and intimidation around it. So I want to just
Mhm.
lead by example and being very transparent and open with my story. But yeah, the payments I remember for my federal loans were about, mm, I think they were set at maybe 100 a month just in that first 6 months of graduation. Wiggle room, it's like they technically didn't even have to be paid, but I remember my dad was like, nope, we're going to be more aggressive than average, so let's try to aim for 300 a month. And he said that because he was helping me at the time.
Mhm.
But that didn't even take into account the private loans. And
Those are
so
the
I
worst.
it was, I mean, I didn't know the extent of what I had gotten myself into until years after I made the mess. Like signing the paperwork, it was just all so nebulous, and it was
Mm.
just crunch time. And I just was like every single year trying to get squared away with financial aid. There was always a hold on my account at the top of the term. So it was a dissociation. And then, yeah, once I was in repayment, they started out pretty lukewarm, but then once Sally Mae got into repayment, at peak, they were 750 a month just from those loans that were private. So in totality, it would have been about $1,000 a month.
Okay. So yeah, I'm looking at the math, like 850 on the low side, 1,000 on the high side.
Mhm.
Imagine you're an adult, you get your first job, you have income. When you're starting out, entry level jobs, depending on your location, can be like 30K on the low end. And then in, I guess, higher city areas, maybe 50 to 60K.
Mhm.
When
That's
you
exactly.
when you take away the taxes and all the things, you don't even have enough to pay for your own housing. You don't have even enough to just pay for your own needs in general, because it's either going to taxes or it's going to your student loans.
Mhm. Basically, I remember
Ugh.
like, because I also started out, this is another problem that through this work, we're trying to tackle things in layers and not bite off more than we can chew at a given time. But it's like the issue of Ivy League schools in particular training their students to only go one route, which is consulting, finance, banking, something of that variety. So if you're in
Mm,
the arts, if you're creative, if you did like me and majored in English, not to say that there are not successful alumni who have thriving careers and are making good use of those degrees, but it's like so few and far between, and they don't devote nearly enough, especially not of the same level of resources and attention to incubating that talent and trying to fast track people into those careers once they graduate. So yeah, I just was playing catch up. Like, I mean, I finished a term early because we were on the quarter system. So I called
mhm.
myself having a head start, even though I was so behind in terms of lining up my first job. I started the spring before graduation, so only had about 3 months. And then I found work with like a small local PR firm, paid 15 an hour. And, to me, as my first big girl job, that seemed like
Yeah.
tons of money. But I mean, in all practicality, I mean, because at that point I wasn't on the hook for my student loans, it was like, yeah, this isn't so bad. But it's like in retrospect, that
Mhm.
was no match for being able to make headway on the actual bulk of the debt if I had really been serious about it at that point.
Yeah. Wow. So many people can relate to your experience, as I know that but for those that are watching this, you are not alone.
Mhm.
Something that comes to mind though is the fact that this isn't a one-off experience. So many people, so many students and young adults, or even, older adults that are, I have clients that are in their 50s and 60s and still are paying off student loans.
For sure.
And it's so frustrating. I am curious to know, that you can see yourself in others and others can see themselves in you. When did you realize that you weren't alone? When did you realize that this was a national issue, and get those gears running into starting your own, like being the solution to your own problem and the problem that many, Black women face in America?
I love this question because I feel like I really don't reflect enough on this moment. I would say like maybe the soft start was in summer of 2018 when I was, just kind of doing a weird in my own way rotational program of sorts. Like after the PR firm, it was like a 3-month contract and it was the epitome of a toxic workplace. So I ran, didn't walk, just out of there. And then I got another contract. So I spent pretty much my first year and a half out of college doing just, finding whatever work I could. So the summer of 2018, I got in with a small fintech startup that is here in Atlanta, based out of Georgia Tech, big university. Their ATDC, like tech incubator, and they had a focus somewhat on student debt. It was more so on helping build a refinance calculator tool. And so my job as the marketing person was to, do like the surveying and like pull together an audience and figure out how to appeal to sell the product. And that entailed like interviewing close friends and family and just anyone that I could get in front of about their student debt experiences, and just starting to kind of put 2 and 2 together. And then, but that was, again, just more preemptive. So I think the moment that it really was like the light switch flipped on for me, and I was like, wait, this is like a huge problem and a huge deficit in albatross, was that following January, like around the top of the year, I actually came across a post on LinkedIn that the cast of the show Good Trouble had done. It was like a PSA that talked about college debt. And
Good Trouble.
yes,
That was the Fosters, right? I freaking love that show.
I was like a diehard. Like I watched
I still watch it.
Yeah, I have to get caught up actually, because they took hiatus for COVID. So I'm now playing catch up to fill in where I left off. But just, in being a fan of the show, it immediately caught my attention. And they put it in such plain terms. They were like, we're fortunate to be actors and to have succeeded in this very lucrative industry where, we're making so much more than the average 25-year-old, but most 25-year-olds are actually starting out in a deficit because college costs have just inflated so much. And then I shared it, and I put my own caption to that. And I was like, the fact that society defines normal as like ushering young people who barely know up from down financially and are just out of high school into these super expensive institutions and are, as the saying goes, mandating education as a necessity, but taxing it as a luxury, it's like the two aren't adding up. So we quite literally are setting our young people up for financial ruin and failure. And I remember getting a lot of support and a lot of people being like, yes, I support this. And I remember just kind of catching this, invigorated, like Holy Ghost spirit. I'm like, man, like I just need to say something and film a video. And I'm so defiant that this is a problem. And then there was this one person, of course, you always get that one who was like challenging it and like, well, this is that socialist thinking that people are entitled to, good paying jobs. And, how about majoring in something practical, and just all the talk and the noise. And then that was my first time being like, oh, wow, there are some people who don't see anything wrong with this and who feel like, we just have to suck it up and keep dealing with it. So that was really what like awakened something in me to get serious about it. But it still took me a while before I was able to turn that into, the entity of TPP and find like a viable avenue for solving the problem.
Wow. So I actually didn't know about that whole part of your story. And I find that so, like, the way that you were speaking about it was so, like, it almost like the response of people, even the one that wasn't so great, if affirmed why you had to do this and invigorated that drive in you to yeah, be that solution to, and I know that we have a long way to go, but we're working towards that.
Yes.
And something that comes to mind, though, that people don't realize is, you know, we hear a lot about predatory lenders in the form of, you know, what comes to mind is the 2008 financial crisis, right? Or, you know, in the 80s with, there's been so many decades with, it's just a repetitive thing, but it's mostly focused on payday loans or mortgages, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that student loans are, or can be another form of that, like a predatory loan?
1000%. Like that's, you know, the harder truth that I feel so many people have a problem accepting is when it's not one of the big bad credit card companies, because, you know, they appeal to you based on the virtue of helping our young people get an education. And it's like, you know, the admissions pamphlets, I just got one from my alma mater the other day, you know, just only talking about this very singular one-sided narrative of their financial aid program. And did you know that approximately 40% of students will use our fund? You know, meanwhile, they're not advertising that they have 6 billion in the bank, you know, making them money and living high off the hog. And meanwhile, they are still, you know, expecting that low and middle income families will, you know, make all kinds of financial sacrifices and endure such hardship for the sake of affording a degree at their school. And so I think there's predation baked into every layer of it. I just feel like, you know, my patience is worn thin on just seeing these schools like continue to prop themselves up. And you know, what's most disheartening is a lot of celebrities are so misguided because they themselves didn't go to college, or, you know, if they did, it was like didn't have to afford these massive degrees because they specialized in trades or arts training at, you know, local schools, whatever. And so it's like, they just think, oh, if I want to help Black people and young Black students, then I'm going to help, you know, fund the HBCUs, or I'm going to create a $1,500 per person grant program, which some is better than nothing, of course, but it's like, I'm just so frustrated because I'm screaming into the void, like, no, like, don't keep supporting these schools, because, you know, you need to be mandating that they do everything they can to make financial assistance more readily available, not as loans, but as grants, because they can do it. They just want you to think they can't. And so, yeah, like so much of it, I feel is like taking advantage of people on the whole premise of advancing yourself. And what college initially was created to do, you know, was like it's hundreds of years ago, before the internet and modern day inventions allowed for us to connect without those vehicles. You know, it's like they hold on to the prestige, and there's really no one to hold them accountable. And so that's where we're trying to come in.
Yes. Okay. So we're going a little rogue here. I think you can tell, but I'm just like, I want to know more. So I have two questions. And the first one is, you know, do you believe, and I think you kind of answered this one already, but just to be clear, do you believe that with the student loan crisis that there needs to be reform, and, you know, maybe there's some nuance here, but I will be perfectly honest, like I don't see nuance, but in this specific crisis, like I actually don't see it. Do you believe in the reform of the student loan, you know, situation, or do you believe that, you know, education should be free and should be a human right? And my follow-up question to that is going to tie into the generational wealth building aspect. So just to get you ready.
Yes, I love the setup, and I love, I'm all about going rogue. I feel like where the conversation leads and, you know,
Yes.
where the energy is there, you know, why not follow? I'm 100% a supporter. I say more so of like educational innovation as opposed to reform,
I love
because
that.
I feel like there definitely is value in, you know, going through and pursuing something for the sake of like increasing a skill set and making yourself more marketable for doing a certain line of work. But I'm like, let's take a hard look at what the modern day 4-year education model looks like, like it's 4 years for the same reason that it takes, those couple months between the votes and inauguration, because when it was all first set up, it took that long to like deliver everything by mail and carrier pigeon and, horse and buggy. It's like now we could know our president a lot sooner, but we've adhered to this tradition just because that's how it's always been done. And the same goes for college. Like it was set up as 4 years because back then people were able to learn only like, I think what, 100th of the information we can learn in like a given day now, thanks to like technology. So, we're spreading it out. We're having students spend their money and their time doing all kinds of frivolous distributives just for the sake of checking boxes. And we're also penalizing risk taking. And, people are afraid to just venture out and take a new course or new class because, oh, but I can't sacrifice my 4.0 GPA because then I'll be screwed for job hunting. And so it's just like, there's so much wrong with it. And I feel like now I'm seeing some companies start to present their own alternatives that seem to be getting it right. We have the Google Career Certificates now, which are a 6-month program. They've been around maybe 2-3 years. And it's like 6 months of guided, dedicated education around project management certificates or, coding or programming, whatever, marketing, what have you. And they are invested in your success because they're hoping you will go on to work for them. And if not them, one of their affiliate companies. And so, and by the way, it's only about $300, which beats the crap out of a 6-figure degree that we see struggling now.
And it goes to a full career afterwards, or it's intended to?
It's intended to. I mean, I don't know that they outright guarantee, but I think it's like they are trying to say, like, we have a lot to gain by you going on to work with us. Like, we'll do everything we can to make sure that you are, trained accordingly. And then of course you're under the tutelage of existing employees. So it's already being taught to you and like shared with you just how to work in line with the company philosophies and all that good stuff. So, I'm seeing Apple is no longer requiring a bachelor's. And I'm like, the more companies can just focus on the skills and the outcome-based learning and not just making people have a degree just for degree's sake, like that's when we'll start to really see this thing hockey stick and be able to say, okay, because part of it too is a lot of students, even though those alternatives are amazing. And as far as I see, like I would have no objections to sending my child to that route. Like I would prefer they go that route than
I'd be like, yes, please.
I'm like, you could literally finance that through a week's work at, like Chick-fil-A. I mean, it's like, just day and night difference in terms of affordability, and then making a young person feel like they are in control of their future, because it's like, oh yeah, I was able to earn the $300 or $400 it takes to get this. And so they have that skin in the game, but it's not like $100,000 worth of skin in the game, And so yeah, I'm a strong proponent of just like innovating these models and being able to have these alternatives that are more effective, and just showing people like that we don't have to keep doing things just because it's how they've always been done. Like there's some people who still feel like, I'm sorry, my kid's going to go to college, but I'm like, that's harmful, because if you're just insisting that they do, so many kids would turn that down because they don't want to disappoint mom and dad, because they don't want to make their grandparents ashamed, and because, they don't want to make the family look bad. So we have to attack it from so many different angles. But in short, definitely, I'm a huge education innovation proponent.
Yeah. Wow. I've been seeing a lot of different shifts myself, like as I have embraced adulthood. So I'm in my 30s now. And before, I used to be so passionate about education and having education being a right and having free universal, anything related to school. And then I realized, well, like, yes, I do still believe that. And I also don't believe that everyone needs to go to college.
Right.
And now that you're seeing all these different alternatives, different paths that still lead to that financial freedom that every student or young adult is seeking after they, enter adulthood. I mean, we have so many options. And now that I've lived, it's been a decade after college, not a single person, including myself, that I know is doing anything related to their degree. My partner, who's here with us right now, he went to school at a private university. He has student loans still. And he went for architecture. And he's not an architect. Like, he doesn't do anything. I mean, he uses the skills he learned to do what he does now, whether that be art or other like fun, like he's designing his mother's oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the term, but she's, what do you call it when it's a fixer-upper? Oh my gosh.
Like renovation?
Yeah, renovation. I kept thinking about innovation. I was like, he's not innovating. So he designed the floor plan, and he's able to do that and do that for her because he has that skill, but it's not, related to the work and income that he's making.
Sure.
So, which is what people think that college is supposed to be. You get a degree and it leads you to a good job that provides you security so you can, house, clean, bathe yourself, feed yourself, and then do that for, your future children or your parents or your family. Like I say, I speak this for myself as a person who's first gen, it was like, oh, like you need to go to college and get the job because you got to take care of us.
You're taking care of mom and dad and grandma and them. Exactly.
So it's so different now. And at the same time, it's the same.
Yeah.
Right. So I love that you're inviting us to think differently, not just like us as student loan holders, but also us as like a economy, us as a government, as a nation, to really think differently and innovate and let go of these ways that are holding us back and holding everyone back. So leading into the generational wealth building, because I think this is super, super important. The Prosperity Project focuses on the disparities that Black women face when it comes to student loans and also many other things related to their financial well-being. So how can Black women claim their financial agency and power in spite of these barriers? I think that a lot of, I hear a lot of women in general talking about, well, I don't know how I can have control. Like it already happened to me. So like, I already have the loans. What more can I do? But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a delicate thing because, Black women have always gotten the shortest end of every stick, financially, professionally, physically, psychologically. Like, it's just, there's not an area where we don't come up short as like, the least desired and just the least well off. And so finance is absolutely no exception, and probably, if anything, at the forefront of the different categories. And so, it's really hard to, like believe in yourself and to have that motivation, that confidence, if I can do anything, when, the opposite has been reinforced both subversively and overtly. And especially when you feel like there's just no hope. Because I remember hearing as a student in college, there was an upperclassman. So I want to say I was like a junior, she was a senior. And she was telling me that bad credit, she's a Black woman, is a rite of passage in her family. She was like, I already know that because of these loans I've taken out to get here and to get this degree, that coming out of school, my credit's going to be jacked up. It is what it is. That's how it is in our family. And, you know, at the age of 20 at the time, I remember just thinking like, man, that's bleak. But as I got older, I'm like, that is effed up. Like, I just hate
Yeah.
that, you know, our culture and our community, it's just been like forced upon us that we can only ever be owers and not owners, and that we are always going to be borrowers enslaved to lending institutions, and that we're going to be, you know, living check to check. I mean, you see the highest concentration of those payday loan places, and, you know, those high interest, ultra predatory everyday loans in Black neighborhoods and in poor neighborhoods. And that's definitely not on accident. It's like they're taking advantage of and preying upon our lack of knowledge and lack of that financial literacy component that's so important. And so, you know, when it comes to Black women being able to claim agency and regain that power, I mean, I think in terms of starting from within, you know, there's going to need to be some healing and just confronting generational traumas and people being willing to submit to new ways of thinking, and just, you know, changing their sources of input, and finding motivation from podcasts or communities or whatever that is. But I think ultimately, you know, non-Black women have to step it up and do a better job of, you know, as the power holders of the moment, you know, being the ones to offer up those opportunities and go out of their way to, you know, make this information more accessible, and, you know, just get rid of the gatekeeping. Because I'm noticing, you know, as I try to do more work and climb the ranks to get Prosperity more visibility, and, you know, take the risks of knocking on big name and high dollar doors, that there can be this reluctance to spread the wealth and even just share the knowledge, you know? So I think internally, yeah, it's about just drawing strength from community and doing whatever you can to like heal and unlearn a lot of the damaging things that we have been taught. But, you know, it's like without people believing in us and those who do hold the power and the keys, being able to make that more accessible, you know, the roads are still pretty blocked off.
Yeah, something that is coming to me is, you know, when it comes to the healing and like the mindset work, I mean, the things that have been passed down from generation to generation is absolutely terrible, and it's something that is lodged in our bodies, but specifically we're speaking about Black women. And it is so hard to process that and grieve that when you're constantly absorbing continued shame and gatekeeping and oppression on the regular. And I love that you are leading an example of how to claim your agency and power, and doing that for, you know, your community. And this is, you know, a CTA to those that are non-Black and watching this right now, is an invitation really to think about, you know, how can you either, I always say it kind of comes into two different ways, but how can you either, one, give up your privilege to uplift, you know, or how can you use your privilege? It's, I don't know, it's really, it is very delicate. But what I'm really interested in knowing too is, you know, what kind of, we talked about kind of like the internal financial agency and power, but what are some policies that you would like to see happen in your lifetime when it comes to uplifting and empowering Black women? And I have, my answer, but I'm curious to know yours.
I may steal your answer saying this because I actually saw, thinking this was on Instagram, like a post earlier about, the power of wealth redistribution
Oh my
and
gosh.
how much better off we would be if Mr. Musk decided that a better use of $45 billion would have been, world hunger, poverty, like racial and social inequity. I mean, you name it. Like there are just so many other causes to go around as opposed to whatever crazy agenda, we're about to witness with this whole acquisition. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I feel like more so than policy, it just needs to be like this action of, those who have like open your purse strings, open your wallets, like fund
Mhm.
Black women. Like Black women are an underpowered, underfunded engine that have the power to accomplish so much because for better and for worse, it's literally been ingrained in us almost in our DNA to, be the torch carriers and the ones
Mm.
looking out for the family and not just our own, but like literally every damn body. Like, there's just so many
Yeah.
times where we're the ones who are the providers and having to be the ones that go out and fend for the family and hold it down as single moms. And yeah, I mean there's just a multitude of circumstances. So I really feel like it could be just that simple. I mean, we're seeing it in action with Mackenzie Scott, who is like the epitome of what it means to be generationally generous and just using that wealth for good and just
Mhm.
being like, no strings attached. Here is $45 million. Like
Yeah.
doing your work, grow it. I want to see it thrive. I just feel like if every billionaire had that mindset, we would be so much further on our way, like very quickly, like in a matter of days, to seeing, just widespread,
Yeah.
Black women's like upward mobility, ability to come to pour back into the community, right? Because it's like a lot of people just stop at like, well, why should I help you? Like I had to pay my student debt and everyone should struggle like I had to struggle. But it's like, okay, you could think like that, or you could say, you know what, I got it out the mud. I'm the one who went through this fire. And so I'm going to leave the door open and help lift as I climb and make it a little easier for the next person so they can take that effort to the next level and do more than I was able to do because I spent so much time, having to struggle and overcome. So that's really, my simplest answer for it is just like, take that and just, pour unapologetically into Black women. I mean, in our specific scenario as a new nonprofit and relatively inexperienced team, I mean, we're learning and we've come a long way since we got our start, but
I'm so impressed all the time. Like
thank you.
genuinely.
I appreciate that a lot because there are so many challengers who just feel like, are you sure you're the right person for this? But I mean, I'm standing 10 toes down on everything we're doing. And when we approach funders and prospective donors, mostly individuals, we get a lot of pushback of, well, what's your Prosperette skin in the game? Like, so they're getting this money from you, but how are they earning it? Like, it looks like a handout. And I'm like, at first I had the diplomatic answer, if it's not a handout, it's a hand up. And, for publicity reasons, we still have that language on our website. But I'm like, the real is that screw that, it should be a handout because Black women have struggled and, had to go without for so long. So it's
Yeah.
like, just the virtue, like the whole principle of us, having to put them through a program where they have to earn it and like, go through coaching to then get the money. I mean, I don't like it. And if I could have it my way, it would be an upfront thing, but we have all kinds of eyes on us for accountability. And it's like the whole concern there is flight risk. But I'm like, y'all are just sleeping on Black women because I'm like, we just need relief, in the most extreme circumstance. We have one Prosperette who has $300,000 now in student loans, single mom of a 6-year-old. And she was denied a mortgage for the longest. And it wasn't just a house for the sake of, taking better Instagram pictures and balling out. It was like a house in a better neighborhood so that her son, could be zoned to a better public school than he was already on track to attend. Like,
Mm.
there's legacy building reasons as to why we need more resources and just, not in 10 years, but like yesterday. So
Yeah.
yeah.
like way yesterday. I cannot wait for you to hear the conversation that I had on today's Tuesday. So it was just yesterday on wealth redistribution, because I'm a part of this wealth redistribution circle, and we are rethinking what it means to do it without being a nonprofit, or without having to go through the restrictions of how that can be as well, because we want to let it be known that nobody has to earn their right to house themselves, or earn their right to keep, their lights on, or earn their right to keep up with their student loans, so they don't have terrible credit and can still be able to invest in a life that isn't just based on survival, but truly thriving. Exactly. And that there doesn't need to be a justification for that. You don't need to earn that. Like, you just get it because you're alive and you're breathing, and that's enough.
Yeah. The same way people who are fortunate, I mean, in some ways and definitely not others, to, come from slave money, right? And live in large because they, their great grandfather exploited an entire system and culture of people for personal gain and greed. And so, now they don't have a single care in the world financially, right? Like, exactly.
What a life.
Yeah, right. Like, imagine.
I honestly cannot. Like, I'm like, what a life. And that's why you brought up the Elon Musk and Twitter thing. And I think it was about 6.6 billion is what I think it was 6.6 billion I'm actually going to look this up, because I did the math, and that's like where my mind was like completely blown. Okay. It was 6.6 billion is to end world hunger, or 6 billion, let's say. And he bought it for 45 billion. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, okay. So
8 times as much.
So 45 billion. Wow. And when I think about it, though, I think about Elon Musk, and that's like an example of, oh, well, like, he's a billionaire. Like, screw him. Like, he could have done this. He could have divested his resources to world hunger, or to Black women who have student loans, or to just Black women in general, because reparations. That's really what I feel. Yeah. And he did not. However, I did the math, and I'm like, I wonder how many people how many people are in this world. And this is the population of the world is, I think it's 7.7 billion. And of course, we have to do math and take away like children, all of that.
Yeah.
But it still goes to show, like, there's enough people on here in this world, even in the United States, that can redistribute their wealth, their excess, specifically, white folks or even just non-Black. Honestly, I'm really fully, like, even for me as a person, I'm like, yeah, like, wealth redistribution all the way, reparations all the way. And when you do that, it really, oh my gosh, the ripple effect into the collective economy is powerful, like powerful. It becomes an economy of nourishment for all. That's really, anyways, I'm going on a tangent now, because I'm really excited, and I love talking about this. And I just thank you for sharing, and also showing that and speaking to that there are options and that it can be done.
100%.
So I have another question, and it was something that popped up on my feed today too. So do you believe that student loan forgiveness is actually going to happen in our lifetime? And it's interesting because it popped up on my feed today where they said that Joe Biden's actually really thinking about and talking about total student loan forgiveness and not just the, 10K that he chucked into the, his first round of election days. So I'm curious, to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I have so many, just because even as we build and iterate our program, that's always a question at the forefront of next rounds is like, are we going to adjust our admission criterion and just only focus on private? It's just such a question mark because I personally feel like he, keeps saying just enough to like get people off his back. I mean, obviously I'm not in the rooms, but I just feel like it's been well articulated way too many times over for there to be any ambiguity as to why it's a good idea and moreover necessary and beneficial. And I know people who have been able to, reach him directly and present their case for it, like just the points that they're making and directly showing modeling of like, if we were to suddenly wipe this out, Black wealth in this country would grow by X%, Native wealth would grow by this percent, Hispanic and Latinx wealth would grow by X%. Like, it's just a given. And so I would love to think that he would be a person to follow through on his word and not just have used that as a bargaining chip to get votes. I really would like to believe that, but I'm not convinced. So, I just, for my own sake of like self-preservation, because before Prosperity, when I felt just like there is no hope for like me or any of us, and this is going to be something I die with, and if the government doesn't step in, there is just no other way. I would really like to think that there would be that action taken, but I've just come to be like, you know what, if I wanted to see this done, like the best chance I stand of being able to guarantee that this happens is just continuing to do this work and, motivating people to like get behind us. And then of course, like other like-minded organizations that are tackling it privately. Cause I just, it's hard to have faith in politicians and you just never know like what their true motivations are, especially because someone like him is statistically not likely to even care, right? In terms of like being affected by it personally or by a family member, having gone to school generations ago when it was like $5 and a sack of corn to go to college.
A sack of corn, that's so real.
I'm like, he knows nothing about these six-figure, $70,000, $80,000 a year price tags that these schools are charging. And, it's really easy to be apathetic when this hasn't been your specific reality. So unfortunately, like my faith in that is not strong, but there could be a miracle. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really leaning into optimism here because I had really, and I don't think the optimism I have is realistic, like because of just what we've seen and experienced. And, it's been, he has had this intention, even like before he was elected, and we haven't seen much movement or chit chat or even acknowledgement on that end. So I have no idea why I just like feel in my bones that it's going to happen. Maybe not with him.
Yeah.
As, but in our lifetime for sure.
Yeah.
When I work with people, I really am of the camp of like, if you pay your loans on time and you just make the minimum monthly payment and, you have good credit, I don't, this might sound grim, but I'm like, it's okay if you die with them, like they disappear. Like,
right. They don't follow your next of kin, which is good.
So I'm like,
that based on the intake. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, just invest instead or save instead. And then when that's, when you've cultivated that, we can redirect extra payments to the loans if that's something you're like super passionate about. But for me, I'm like, look, they were made so you die with them. Like, honestly.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like that is of the camp for those that are in that privilege, they have good credit, they can make their monthly payment and they have an income that can be supportive. But when I think about, the folks that are in your program, they don't have that luxury yet. You're
Mhm.
teaching them that to
Yep.
have that luxury, which is great. And yeah, so I guess my other question is, when the Prosperettes graduate, can you actually enlighten me a little bit and our audience here of what that process is? Like, when they get through the door, what does the Prosperity Project support them with? And then when they graduate, they do graduate. It's like a 6-month program or a year program.
Well, currently 8 months, but we're trying to
Okay.
expand it up to a full 12-month year. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, what are some of the transformations that you've seen?
Yeah, well, in all, transparency, like it's taken us so long to get to the point of finally kicking it off, but we did officially commence round one, our 2022 class, about 2 weeks ago on April 16th. And
What is time?
I know, right? It's just like COVID has made it all very blurred.
Mhm.
But yeah, we just kicked off, and it took us the longest because, of course, being able to make good on the financial piece and the retroactive scholarships was like our top concern because, we could have just outsourced the financial coaching and just said $1,000, take it or leave it. But we were like, we see it as worth it to like get this as close to perfect as we can and give them as much, especially for this first class who has like been the true guinea pigs and, done it completely backwards by like applying and getting accepted. And then the program like starts a year and a half later, and going with us on the fundraising journey. So, I mean, once they are in and as it will work moving forward, they get accepted. And then there's this custom built financial financial coaching curriculum that we've partnered with our own in-house team of, financial experts, CPAs, CFPs, who've all put their unique imprint on it and, just made it really unique and customized to like meet the needs of Black women specifically. So each module is 1 month long and they have small group sessions every other week. They have monthly seminars and they will have, assignments that they're responsible for, but it's not like the bar where, it's made to like weed out the doers from those who can't, right? It's like, we want this to be just an accelerator, and it's like accountability just for the sake of keeping people engaged so that they are, not wasting our coaches' time or their own time and our time, but that they're actually like committed and getting something out of it. So, it's really light work in the grand scheme, all for their benefit. And as they go through it, so we're starting out this program just for this time only because of all the sweat equity and the patience that they've demonstrated to just, hang tight for no money all this time. They're getting $1,000 up front. And then for those who have 40K or more in student loans, we're paying up to 10K. So it'll be like 4,500. And then those with less than 40K, 35% of that balance split into two at the end of the FinCo in September, and then at the end of the program in totality in December. So yeah, I mean, it's just like, we're all remote, and that's one of the things we're also trying to improve moving forward, is having it be a hybrid to where it's based in a particular region or location, so that there is the opportunity for coaches and Prosperettes to connect over coffee or to, go to WeWork and hold their sessions and not only be limited to Zoom. So yeah, I mean, we tried to make it as robust as we can, and certainly there's so much more that we plan to add and fine tune it with as we keep running these. But as of right now, that's the shape that it's taking.
That is so amazing. And congratulations on finally launching this initiative, because it is so, so needed. And I mean, this just goes to show your resilience, right? And the resiliency of your team and the resiliency of your Prosperettes. They had waited this long, and now it's finally here. And, to be honest, like I feel, and I know you will echo this too, but I feel like it was definitely worth the wait, and the magic that you are going to see now that you've built this curriculum for them and the magic that they're going to experience, they aren't going to be the same people that they walked into this program when they leave it.
No, not in any sense, because we're not just looking at, okay, what's your cash flow, what's your expenditure. We're asking them questions like, what are your feelings every time you check your bank account? Like, how does it make you feel? Like, what are some of the words that come up? And, in a completely judgment-free zone, right? It's not like we're asking that to then point the finger and be like, shame on you, right? It's like, okay, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being vulnerable and allowing us to go on this journey with you and giving us the right access needed to help you figure this out and get to a healthier place, to where money doesn't give you anxiety and to where you feel confident and capable of maintaining a month-over-month budget. Yeah, I mean, we're really trying to like just do all the deep work that's needed to, I mean, they're great as is, but like to even just take them to that next level. And then of course, like tying it into the bigger picture and like having partners that can help them find better job opportunities as a result. And they not just be stuck in dead end, part-time jobs. One Prosp said that at one point she was doing 4 part-time jobs because of her student loans. So yeah, I mean, it's meant to be like a comprehensive effort to rid the, toxic and just fearful energy that there is with that, and just to, replace that with like better, more sustainable habits and behaviors, and just they organically get to that evolved place, with our help, but ultimately they keep it going as they move forward.
Wow. I am so excited to see the journey, but also see what happens in the end when they graduate after 8 months this round, right? This will be, when will it be? August? No.
The FinCo is done in September and the whole thing concludes second week of December.
Wow, that is huge. Well, as we wrap up, is there anything that you want to say to our audience? Something that comes to mind, and if not, how can people find you, work with you, collaborate with you, or continue the conversation?
Oh yes, all the things to say. So first, thank you so much for like hearing this whole conversation. And, if you've made it this far, thank you for, your investment of your time and just hearing my story and the story of this organization. And, coming up, we do have quite a bit happening with our 35 to Free conference. So that's always a great way for people to just hook in, because it really is like a single day snapshot of the 35 to Free initiative. As you can tell, they're interrelated because of the shared name. And, it's meant to be a day of just activities and keynotes and panels that are all about Black women's financial literacy and professional empowerment and development. So, we have some amazing speakers this year on the docket. Like I couldn't be more proud and just humbled by the caliber of folks.
I'll be there.
Yes. Stella Gold will be in the house with running it back on salary negotiation workshop. And we're so privileged because it was such a hit last time. And our keynotes include COO of the Academy that does the Oscars, no big deal, Christine Simmons. And we'll also be joined by Alelia Bundles, who is the great granddaughter of Madam CJ Walker and is carrying on the legacy through her Madam Hair Care brand. So reviving, the original work that her great grandmother first did to become the first Black female millionaire.
Yeah. I mean,
at that time,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure if you adjust for inflation, she probably would have been, So yeah, we'll have just some really heavy hitters.
I'm excited.
Yes. So tickets are only $5. So please register. I'm sure I'll be sharing with you like the link and everything in the postscript notes. So we'll
put it in the bio of the video for sure.
Yes, so I'll make sure to get you that. For those who can't make it though, hopefully you've been moved by this conversation and would just find it in your heart to, just make a donation outright. No amount is too small, certainly no amount is too large. And we need all the help we can get to keep a consistent donor base funding and, helping our work grow. And other than that, we have a ton of needs as well as on our team, for marketing, for publicity. There's kind of a myriad there. So I can also share more details for the bio and for the notes on the video there as well. But yeah, just in any case, just even participating in spirit and just sharing the word on social media and telling a friend about what we're up to goes a long way. So any and all of the above would be really appreciated.
Yes. And I love what you said, participating in spirit. It's so real. And I am so grateful for those that have, stayed with us for this full, amazing, rich conversation about something that's so important, so vital, and so needed. And just thank you so much, Bree, for your time, spirit, and energy and space to be present with us today.